You swear all the time.
All the time.
Okay, we are recording now.
It's a swear-friendly podcast.
Okay, good.
It's swear positive.
Swear positive.
I think it's swear positive.
We don't take a lot of stances on this podcast.
It's hard for me to be into the podcast if I don't hear the intro music.
Did you not hear it?
I didn't.
I heard it. It's
You're
already started.
the only guy with headphones. This is great.
We're not going to go back and do it again, but just know that it has started. It has begun. So I don't know. How old are you?
31.
You're 31. So when did you go on your mission? Like
2006 to 2008.
2006. How old would I have? How old were we in 2006?
17.
17. So my sister. Okay, so here's the deal.
Finally, now that we're recording.
I feel there was a general conference talk on like why would somebody want to dig up garbage?
So anyway, that talk is meaningless.
Yeah, the landfill in Idaho analogy.
My sister wrote you. We have a guest, by the way.
This is the Mission Stories podcast.
Mission Stories podcast. I'm Troy. Lyndon's here. Hi, Lyndon.
Hello.
Actually, you both have something. Wait, no. Did you ever go on a date with my sister?
Like, ish.
I want to dedicate.
Was it less awkward than the date you went on with Aiden? Probably.
That's good. I like that. No, dude, no. That was like the most awkward day. That there was no more awkward.
Or
day
the Utah.
than that day.
I'm a dancer, singer.
Yeah, that one was pretty good too.
Julianne Hough, I think her name was.
That's like an actress. That's like a real actress. You wrote my sister wrote you letters on your mission. She wanted to date you or something, and then
I didn't pick up on that.
And then she was supremely disappointed. I think you sent her chocolate or something. Like, I swear, we have a picture in our house of you on your mission in England.
Still?
Yeah.
Framed and everything?
I don't know.
She's getting married.
Yeah, she's getting married on Saturday.
Why are we talking about this? Like,
I just wanted to start things off weird.
So now we know
how
Andrew and Troy are related. That's their connection to each other.
What is your connection, Lyndon?
We're roommates and kind of brothers because your dad gave me a hug, and I don't think he's hugged anyone else in your family.
Has he hugged me?
No.
Your dad, does he like me? Don't tell me. Don't tell me. I don't want to know.
I think he does.
Unless he does.
Because I think he remembers you.
Okay.
Only probably because you're tall.
He's
like, your tall friend. He's cool.
Yeah.
But no, he's only given Andrew a hug.
Okay.
Yeah. Andrew was my roommate fresh off the mish.
Why did he give you a hug?
Cuckows are huggy people.
Okay.
And I was probably hugging like every other Nagless, and I'm charming and funny and whatever. He probably looked at me and thought, this is the son I always wish I had. And hugged me after Christmas. I don't know. It was a Christmas dinner or something, and the Naglesses took me in as a stressed out 23, 24-year-old who is navigating post-mission life.
Yes.
And I think so. Not only were we roommates, but whenever the Naglesses did a family thing, I got invited to tag along.
Okay, that's cool.
Not every family thing, but like a few. They'd come over for a family dinner or whatever, and they're, Andrew, come along.
Andrew. None of the other roommates, just Andrew.
Just me.
So you guys are tight. You guys are pretty close, and you're a listener. You're an avid listener. You're a true and faithful listener of the podcast. Yeah,
I was telling Lyndon actually that my favorite thing, I like your guys' is the way you go about doing the podcast. Like, it was tough to get into it first because it's so laid back and conversational. But we got a dog 6 months ago. We have to walk him for like 2 hours a day. Take the dog for a walk in the morning. Listen to your podcast. I start the day, I feel like I've had a conversation with good friends. You know?
Wow.
Yeah. Like I know I wrote you guys hate mail, but I just wanted you to have something to laugh about. Like, yeah.
It was funny. I liked how you told me not to take every piece of feedback to heart, and how you have to listen to me. Because that was like kind of a hard medicine moment where I was like, I do describe whitewashing literally every single time I bring it up.
Yeah.
And I bring it up a lot.
Because it was interesting because Braden's hate mail was obviously like, a joke.
Yeah.
And he's just like, you guys are the worst. And we like fake got mad at it.
Well, hey.
But then Andrew's email is like, hey, here's some like really stupid things you guys do. And we're like,
It's like,
the best part about it, I guess, was that you guys were like, doesn't he read the credits on the video? And truth be told, this is like, I did a Troy Cooper thing where I saw it filmed by Dave Hyatt.
Yeah.
And then I just thought, oh, Dave Hyatt wrote and directed these, didn't he? So you guys are like, oh, he knows what he's doing. I'm like, I literally have no idea that I'm digging the knife here. I just saw film by Dave Hyatt, and I'm like, oh, Dave Hyatt did these.
Actually, you thought you
I
were just being
Dave
honest.
you're just like, oh,
and I'm like, this guy knows how to push my buttons, doesn't he?
Yes.
But you were just honestly like, no, but like in a sincere note, like, David Hyatt, wow, great job, buddy.
I did watch.
Like, I really like the actors you hired for this.
I watched the Cyborgs.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I watched, I think, one episode of that. The reason why, like, I thought it was really well done, and I know nothing about film, but I liked it. But it gave me the sense of 90s nostalgia.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of like, okay, like, I don't want to watch Power Rangers again. So I got the nostalgia kick. That's good.
Yeah.
Do I want to watch
Power
Rangers or something? No.
So like you're satisfied, you're saying. You're like,
it was satisfying thing, and I thought it was well done. He's
gonna love this, by the way.
Well, that's good because
we have an
email from him. This is such a good segue, actually.
Because I think, like, watching your guys' other videos, I'm like, you know what? And I'm not some kind of artistic connoisseur or something like that, but I thought
he is.
This is well done kind of stuff.
Oh,
like this is actually a talented group of people who are using their time being single to do something awesome. Right? Well, like when I was
our time being single.
What?
So you really maximized your entire 10-year career in YSA.
10 full years.
Well, what do I have to my name for it? Like
a wife,
but
children.
No, but like
a lovely home and career.
And one of my friends played some acoustic gigs, and he's talented and I was terrible, and that's what I have to my name. And I think there might be a video floating around on somebody's Facebook.
Well, we gotta watch it.
Well, he may or may not be a friend of mine anymore. Like it is on the internet somewhere. I just don't have it. So,
okay, I got an email here from David Hyatt. Here's what it says. Hi, Troy and Lyndon. I was just listening to your latest Doctrinal Delights episode, and I wanted to take a minute to thank Andrew for his kind words about me. He's absolutely right, of course. Without my masterful filmmaking skills, the Mission Stories videos would be just normal YouTube garbage instead of being elevated to the masterful work of art that they are. Also, Troy, you're in Cyborg, so I guess you could say that I'm the reason you're the man you are today, and I hold the key to your entire future in the palm of my hand. I dangle it in front of you like an exhausted parent who put their 6-month-old baby under one of those arch toys with plushies hanging down. You reach for the fluffy puppy that's floating above you, but it's always just out of reach, elusive, until I allow you to have it. This guy's a sicko. This guy's a sick freak.
We had this guy as a guest on our podcast?
This guy was a guest?
I thought he was awesome.
Check out Dave Hyatt's episode. He says, haha, I'm kidding. LOL, haha, Roth lol. I did like hearing my name on the podcast, though. I didn't write or direct any of the Mission Stories videos. Yeah, we clarified that. But I did shoot 3 of them. None of them completely, though, except I love how detailed he's being. None of them completely, though, except maybe the Predator one. Yeah, that was all you, man. All I did was bring my fancy cinema camera, and I never should have bought and pointed it where I wanted it pointed. I do have an idea for a Mission Stories video, though. We just have to get started on it now in order to have it done in time. Ooh, I'd love to hear it. Anyways, keep up the good podcasting. Don't let anyone bring you down. Dave Hyatt.
He's going after that writing credit.
He is, yeah. P.S. Andrew was right about one thing, though. My episode rules, and you guys would be crazy not to have me back sometime. Should we have him back sometime, Lyndon?
I'm going to let Andrew, true and faithful, answer that.
You're going to let Andrew decide.
Well, what I liked about David Hyatt is that he's, like, I don't know him, but he seemed like a real interesting person.
Yeah.
And I think, you don't find a Mormon filmmaker, and if you do, he's usually not, like, good, especially in Calgary.
Yeah.
Like, you guys talked a little bit about at first, why are so many of our listeners accountants? And I think the better question is, why are so many Mormons accountants, like me included?
You're an accountant?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason is I've got to get married. I've got to have 5 kids.
Yeah.
And I've got to find a way to provide for all of them. The law market's saturated. Or oversaturated. So, like, I think, like, every young men's leader I had in the 90s was like, I'm going to law school. And now that one's oversaturated.
Now it's accounting.
Becoming a doctor's too hard.
Yeah.
Accounting is, like, just easy enough and pays just good enough to get me a house in Tuscany and the 5 kids. And,
Do you have 5 kids?
No, I don't. But I'm just saying, like,
He's almost there.
Pretend I'm a recently returned home
Right.
missionary.
No, it's so true. You're
What's
so right.
my meal ticket to the upper middle class so that I can take care of 5 kids and live in Tuscany or Royal Oak or what?
Be Stephen Harper's neighbor.
Do you remember, Lyndon? Do you remember when you and I had a double date with 2 ladies, and it was like a weird double date situation?
Right?
I think I might have dated one of them already.
Yeah.
I think that was the timeline. And anyway, so we were playing the game. What was the game? It was like a truth or dare, not a truth or dare, but like tell the truth about something.
Yeah.
And
some sort of social game.
yeah, and it was like, why? Why? What was the question? It was like, why do you do what you do or something?
What's your primary motivation? It's like, if you could boil down into a single essence, what motivates you? What would it be? And Troy just jumped. He's like, I will answer that first.
I'm like, so basically, and I basically say what you were saying, where I was just like, everything I do is about like attracting a nice Mormon lady, like career, school, my life decisions, just everything was centered around like attracting a nice Mormon lady. And everyone at the table is just like silent. As like, we're just like waiting in my embarrassment, and just soaking in it.
Because it was like something that we were like, I don't want to say, and I'd have to think about it.
Yeah.
But you instantly were just like, yeah,
women.
I have to be able to win the patronage.
So, but like, it's such like you bring up such a good point. Like, so many people, that is what they do, and they just like sort of skip over. And I feel like you can find yourself at like, I don't know, 27, 28, 29. I just
29.
I just turned 29 this past weekend, by the way.
Happy birthday, Troy.
Okay, thanks. I was like, anything? Anybody?
No, Troy. No.
Anyone gonna?
We're gonna remember it now about as much as what we did last weekend.
Thanks, bro. Glad you're on.
No problem, dude.
Glad you're on the PCast. So anyway, that's interesting. Do we have some toppy tops? Some topical tops? Either of you?
Well,
you guys are very like similar vibes. You know that?
There's a reason why we were good friends.
That's why my dad hugged him. He probably mistook Andrew for me.
Thought he was Anaglos.
Just felt Lyndon's energy and went for the hug.
There's something Lyndon said where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to myself. And it's just when I was on the phone on my way here where I'm like, the rental car company only fills it up a quarter tank and only expects me to bring it back a quarter tank. But who the heck brings how can I just bring it back with a quarter tank? They're gonna end up with like 5/8 or something. Like they're gonna be making money off of my little over a quarter anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm telling him this and he's like, those monsters. And I'm like, that's what I would have said. In that same tone. Nobody can tell if it's serious or sarcastic.
We were like joking about how Braden, Lyndon's brother, when he came on, that like people would mistake them for each other or whatever. But I think like you're the one people they're gonna have a hard time differentiating between the two of you.
He compliments the podcast about as much as I do. He's like, how wonderful is it that you've just used this time to be creative and follow your passion? These are all the things I say. I'm like, how great of us that we've done this thing.
We're so great.
Like we started doing the film festival when I was in YSA, probably like 2009. And the majority of films are terrible.
Yeah.
And the ones that were good probably weren't even as good as like your Mission Stories videos. Oh. And they were, pretty good. But it just seems like you've got this kind of, I don't know, talented group of people who are trying to do something. And it's outside of that Mormon box of like, I need to get a job so that I can have 5 kids so that I can live in Tuscany.
Yeah.
Was that go to the temple? Like that was.
So that was your big goal. See, here's the thing. We're like, I'm gonna like basically ask you if like, I don't know if you have regrets or anything, but like I don't want to ask you that because like you have a wife and kids and a family and everything, and you have that life that I assume you like were searching for as just a returned missionary.
Don't worry, they don't listen to the podcast.
They don't listen, do they?
So you can say whatever you want.
She gave it a try actually.
Oh, she did.
Because she, Lyndon was reminding me of this yesterday, and I forgot about it. So when you guys are talking about that, when you had that dating episode, like I just wished I could have been here. Because when Aiden was talking about that guy who like obligatorily, not you, the guy who obligatorily asked her for her phone number, but there was really no vibe. Like I remember doing that.
Yeah.
And then also going on the date where there's obviously no vibe, but you just feel this. Elder Oak said that I need to go on a date once a week and not hang out and blah, blah. And like, if you want to take that as a topical topic, I could.
Dude,
you'd have 2 episodes or 3. You'd have a full-on John Dehlin like part 1 and 4. But
we like banking episodes now. So
I had so much. It was so weird when I was in junior high and high school. I wasn't very good looking or anything like that, but I would be able to find a girl, and I'd find a girl by not paying attention to her. And I wasn't interested in kind of finding a girlfriend. I just would live my life, and a girl who liked me that I also liked, it would just kind of happen.
Yeah.
And then when I came home from my mission, for some reason, I could meet a girl. She'd be interesting. She'd be nice looking. I'd go on 2-3 dates. And all of a sudden, as soon as it came to kind of, are we getting into a relationship or are we just friends? Mm-hmm. I get this soul-crushing anxiety, and I just kind of walk away. And then I kind of come back and then walk away. And I was so confused as a returned missionary because I thought it was like a spiritual manifestation. I didn't realize it was anxiety.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a spirit thing. And I'm so trying to be in tune still in a weird kind of way.
I had that.
And so and the way I ended up meeting my wife was I had exhausted myself so much where I was like, I don't care about dating. I don't care about women. I'm working on finishing school. I'm working on my career. This is the only thing in my life that I can control right now, and that's all I'm going to pay attention to. And then within 3 months, I met my wife. But Lyndon knows my wife as well. Mm-hmm. And I had a stress breakup with her. We would have these stress breakups probably, I don't know, once a month kind of thing where I would freak out.
So what is it like? God, dude, I have the exact same problem. This is so funny. Like for me, I don't know how else to describe it other than that. Like you just there's like this panic. There's like this
soul
weird,
crushing. Yeah.
Like you're trapped. Like there's a feeling of trappedness or something. What was that? What did that feel like for you? We just had like this episode about mental health. Like we talked to what's her name, Mercedes, and so I don't know. This is interesting.
Well, it was this tightness in my chest, and it wouldn't go away. And the only thing that would make it go away was breaking up.
Yeah.
And
oh man,
I think it's so. Anyway, my wife, who is probably I think the greatest woman who's ever come into my life. I did this first kind of stressed out, kind of like I don't think this is gonna work, and she's like, BS, like why not?
Yeah.
I don't get you. Like we had a great time tonight.
She like fought you on it.
Yeah, but it was good. It wasn't
a liar.
Like yeah, like she kind of called me, and
that's what you needed though.
She wanted to. So I was so embarrassed of this anxiety that I felt because I didn't want to be seen as a crazy person.
Yeah. And
so one night we would play like Would You Rather till like 1 a.m. or something like that. Like we started dating in Calgary in the winter. So what do? You play cards, you go to the movies, you watch
sit in each other's car.
Sit in each other's car and talk or pretend to talk. Right.
You go ice skating. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe and get hot chocolate. Right. And then it's like, Good thing I brought that booster pack from Canadian Tire so I can jumpstart my battery, right? Like, because it's minus 50.
Yeah.
But we've been putting off this date because it's been minus 50 for the whole month, and we finally have to do it.
We have to do it because Elder Oaks said so.
Exactly. But
I have to get that house in Tuscany, 5 kids, so
exactly.
Let's do this.
So she was like, why are you? And I just told her, I said, look, this has happened for the last 3 years that I've been home from my mission. For some reason, when a relationship starts to get any more serious than going on a couple dates, I get soul-crushing anxiety, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
And the only thing that makes it go away is breaking up and walking away. And she's like, she just tells me, like, yeah, some people in my family have had anxiety issues, and why don't you just go to the doctor, get your medication, and get over it? I'm like, what do you mean, get over it?
Over it?
Don't you know I'm a crazy person? I have anxiety. I'm a person who has to take pills now. Like, how could you ever love me?
Are you a pill guy?
I was.
There's
like,
nothing wrong with that, by the way.
And I know some things are chronic. Mine wasn't chronic. I had just, I think I'd exited a stressful situation as a missionary. I think I'd come into a stressful situation as a new return missionary with the pressure of trying to get married and provide for a family. And it was just like, it was overwhelming stress because when I was in high school and you start dating somebody, you're not evaluating them for eternity. And you're not overthinking like, oh, is that like that one weird thing they did or said? Is that a sign of things to come?
Am I not going to like them when I'm married to them?
Or even like
5 years down the road.
Are they going to be an apostate? Are they going to, will they always stay true to the faith?
Right.
If the prophet commands us to gather in Missouri, will she have the faith to pull a handcart? Like, it's not, and these are things like,
will she have the lower extremity strength to pull a handcart?
After giving birth to 5 kids, will her, and
can she pull a wagon?
What 21-year-old should think that when trying to find a girlfriend? So anyway, Lyndon, I had one of these stress breakups, and this was the one where I was determined, like, no, this is it. I mean it this time. And me and Lyndon and I think Caitlin came and Braden came and went to go see Sucker Punch, which I still think is one of the greatest movies of all time.
All the Nagless siblings went out for a movie.
And we just we talked it over. We talked it over the next day.
I went on a date with a girl to that movie. That's what I was doing during that same time. Sorry, continue.
And so the next day I went back to her house. And she lived with like 4 or 5 roommates in the Vandergrift house, if that's still a thing.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Unfortunately.
Okay. That's a reference.
I'm a
Not
relic.
a lot of people. Some of our listeners will get it.
Yeah.
Some of them will not.
And they're all like giving me death stares, like, how could you do this? She's been crying all day. She missed church because she was crying. And
she missed church.
Yeah, like, how could you're destroying her eternal soul? And we talked and we worked things out. And, I went to, before we got engaged, I remember feeling so much stress and anxiety and blah, 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 blah. And I was thinking about it. And coincidentally, I was in the temple when this happened.
Coincidentally.
And I don't know.
What are you about to say?
Was it? I don't know. That's probably how revelation happens and where it can occur. And does it occur more often in the temple versus in a garden versus driving to work versus working out? I don't know.
Good question.
But it just so happened to be in the temple, and I get this overwhelming. It was clear thoughts in my head, and it was just like, everything you're worried about is what married people go through. Now, you marry her, this is probably the right girl. You break up with her, okay. You can find somebody else. Life will go on, but you're going to have the same doubts and the same concerns. And all the things you're going to have to work through with her are the kinds of things you'd have to work through with anybody. You're going to keep running in the same situation. It's not going to be any different. So, I think you should do it.
That's God talking.
Yeah, God talking.
Just really vaguely.
If it was me,
I
would.
Think you should. Like, she's good looking, so I would date her.
If you want to try this nightmare again, be my guest. But these things aren't going to go away.
Right.
This is what being married is. You disagree with each other. You have different values. You view the gospel differently. You view everything differently. You're going to have problems. You're going to have financial problems. You're going to have whatever family problems. You're going to have issues with in-laws. You're going to have issues with intercourse. Like all these things are going to, it's not going to be happily ever after. It's going to be pain, tears, and suffering. And, when I reflect on my marriage now, which has been 7 years, which isn't a long time, but longer than others, why do I love my wife now? Why did I love my wife when I first married her? It was she was toned, she was tanned, she was funny, she was fun, but most of all, like, she was just gorgeous. Why do I love my wife now? Because we've built a life together. And why would I want to give this up? And it's been a lot of fights, a lot of screaming matches, but it's all so worth it. And every year gets better and better. And how well we get along gets better and better. And just figuring each other out more and more. So yeah, it is scary. It's worth the anxiety though, I think.
I still quote the famous speech I gave you after that last breakup, your stress breakup.
I can't remember it. I remember I got back together. I can't remember when. Just remember I went to Sucker Punch.
It was all a blur. We saw Sucker Punch. When I woke up, I was at the altar across from my wife. I don't know.
I always take credit.
7 years later.
Take credit for you getting back together because I sat you down and I was like, Andrew, we are little fish in a little pond. I was like, it doesn't get any better than Ashley.
Lyndon was just in the wings waiting for you to move on. He's like, you know what? Maybe there is someone else out there for you.
He's like doing his little stress breakout. And he's like, and there's this and there's this and it's just not worth it. And I was like, you think it gets any better, Andrew? You been to Brentwood Ward? You looked around?
It's so true.
That's the thing. I will never forget the first time I saw her in sacrament meeting, because she's not she was never a typical kind of LDS girl. And I just remember she's a track star. So she's in very good shape. And she had just spent the whole summer at her family's cabin in the Okanagan. And she was tanned. And I was just like, I've never seen a Mormon girl like this before. And she was dressed so classy. And I was like, where's your denim skirt and flip-flops? And maybe you'll get a lot of female hate mail from that, but guaranteed any hate mail would be from people wearing denim skirt and flip-flops.
Don't worry.
What's wrong with denim skirt
No
and
women
flip-flops?
listen to this podcast.
That's not true. I talked to one of our true and faithfuls who
It's
is
true.
a woman.
Some of the most truest and faithfulest.
Yeah. Shout out to, I don't know if she wants me to say her name, but.
Probably not.
Anyway, shout out.
You know who you are.
Cheryl Naglis.
Nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with denim jeans and flip-flops. What did you call it? What?
No, denim skirt and flip-flops.
Denim skirt and flip-flops. That's like a 2001 outfit.
And hey, some of those returned sister missionaries pre-surge are pulling it out of the closet still.
Let's talk about your mission. Let's talk about your mission. Let's talk about how it has affected you. Maybe this, the way we frame this episode can be the way we look back on our missions now, especially as a married man, as you have a family now and everything. Turning back around, because that's a lot of what this podcast has been for Lyndon and I is we had one experience as we were living it, and then as we turned back around to look at it, it's oh, I was really sad, I was really happy. That's another thing I kind of wish we would talk more about, is they're actually these sort of ecstatically joyful times as a missionary, but also the deepest, darkest depths of sadness as a missionary too. And it's kind of we were talking to Mercedes about how heightened that can be as a missionary. Those highs and those lows are very high and very low. for yourself, I know that's kind of a general and maybe vague way to start out, but how do you look back on your experience as a missionary? Where did you serve, first of all, actually?
I was in the England, Manchester.
Right. I knew that.
Manchester mission, yeah.
Okay.
So the thing about the Manchester mission is it's the northwest of England, and the northwest of England used to have a lot of coal mines and mills, and then Margaret Thatcher and just kind of coal going the way of the dodo, a lot of jobs kind of disappeared in the northwest. So
yeah.
It's not as affluent as what you'd find kind of south, kind of more in the London area.
Yeah. And
so lots of people who aren't working, lots of people who have spent generations kind of not working and just kind of doling it out. Especially, like, I didn't serve in the big cities either.
Yeah.
And so in the more kind of towns and villages and stuff like that, of course, they're hit harder. Like, I'm sure Liverpool, Manchester probably have a lot going on. I never served there.
Yeah.
I was always in the country. Kind of thing. And so people who are definitely poor financially, poor in spirit, poor in heart, kind of thing. What I learned was that, like, I could be really, really bold. And so kids would come up to us on the street and they kind of knew about Mormons and knew we were weird and we didn't drink and whatever. And they'd be like, you ever had any alcohol? You ever had any alcohol? You'd be like, no, I haven't. And did you know Paul in the Bible said that the wine bibber will not go to heaven? And they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, it means if you drink, you're going to hell. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah. Like, has anybody told you, like, drinking's not good for you? They're like, no, like, nobody. And I'm like, no.
No, nobody told us. Please, sir.
Well, like,
what's a northern England accent?
Like, I haven't done it for so long.
Tell us the truth, sir.
No, that's like south. Like, north is, it's...
Oi.
No, north is its own... It's broad, but they're like, all right, yeah. Well, just out for walk, down road with dog. Just got me paper.
Me paper.
You all right, lad? Oh, yeah, I'm all right, lad. Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Oh, well. Kind of thing. Like,
it's not my favorite English accent.
It's not great.
It is literally nobody's favorite English accent. But Scary Spice, Mel B. has a northern... She's Yorkshire, which was the other... Like, that's the east side of the north, and the Manchester mission was the west side of the north part of England. But it's similar. So it's, it was off the chin. Like, and so... I'd listen to these people and I'd be like, I can't see a doctor here. Like, can you imagine? Oh, yeah, just go down pharmacy, get yourself prescription. Get that
rash will go away soon enough, young man.
Yeah, get ointment on rash.
I'm just doing an impression of your impression. I don't know.
Troy's starting to kind of have like a Jamaican thing.
Hey, man. Put a little man on it.
But rash
will clear right up, man.
So, yeah. So what we're like...
So, like...
You're real bold with these folks.
You were really bold.
You could be really bold. Like, you could just tell them, no, that is not what Jesus said. That is not good for you to do. And if you do that, you're going to hell. You're not going to like it. And they're just kind of like, oh, really? Like...
Okay, let me ask you this.
No coal mining jobs in hell. That would probably speak to him.
So did you always want to go on a mission?
No.
When did you decide you wanted to go on a mission?
Here's the thing. So I'm the oldest child, and I think people say, the oldest child always feels a sense of duty and responsibility. So I felt like I needed to go on a mission. Mm-hmm. I felt like I had a duty to God to go on a mission. And I had a desire to teach the gospel. I 100% did not have a desire to not watch movies, not hang out with friends, and talk to strangers who are going to reject me, you know, for 10 hours a day. But I felt like a passionate desire to share the gospel and to teach it. I did not feel the desire to talk to strangers.
Right.
And that struggle never went away.
Yeah.
I know there were some people, like, we had a lot of, pedestrianized town centers with just people. And so a lot of what we do, instead of tracting, we just go into the town centers and talk to people. And I remember my first day doing that. And as we'd walk to the town center from our apartment, we just talked to whoever we saw on the street. And the first or second person I saw just told me to F off. That was all he said. Like, I was just like, I'm Elder Cuckow from Kent. And he's like, F off. I'm like, okay.
And they say the F word so, like, great. Like, ooful, you know, like, it's very, like, fool.
Yeah.
Fool.
Like, the first time I didn't pay too much attention to it because I was like, like all I could hear was the sound of my heart breaking. And then me and my companion walk into the town center, and it's just like it's walking around. It's like walking around downtown Calgary, like Eau Claire Market at lunch hour.
Yeah,
there's just people everywhere, and they're in a rush, and you're trying to talk to people, and they're not interested.
Yeah,
and you, so I get through maybe 15 minutes of that, and I'm looking at just people everywhere, more people than I'd ever seen. And I tell my companion, my trainer, I'm like, I can't do this. He's like, let's go get lemonade and just think about this. So there was a part member family that owned a cafe, and we went there and we got some lemonade, and I'm like on the verge of tears, and he's like, don't worry about it, man. Like, it all gets better. Like, yeah, it's intimidating at first, but it gets better.
And this is all from the guy who told you to F off?
No, my trainer didn't tell me to F off.
No.
Oh,
no. Like you're like having a meltdown because this guy told you to F off.
Yeah.
And then getting into the square.
And then getting into the town.
It
was more like, okay, the first experience is really bad. And then I'm in this situation where, oh my gosh, like I've never seen so many people, because I was from the suburbs and I worked in the suburbs, and I never went downtown really, you know, unless I had to go get my shots or something. So I never seen anything like that. And I was like, holy crap, like I can't.
It was overwhelming.
It was overwhelming.
It was really overwhelming.
Right.
And yeah, my trainer just kind of told me to pick it up, but I always had like a sense of anxiety. So did insults start rolling off my back? Yeah. Did I ever stop feeling like I stuck out like a sore thumb and like have that sense of dread? Like, everybody can see you and nobody wants to talk to you. That never went away.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking, we've got a suite in our basement. The missionaries live in our suite, and I was talking to them. And one of the reflections I had was, you know what, if I could do my mission over again, I would just speak honestly about whatever was on my mind. So if I saw people on the street, I'd be like, you know, I'm going to talk to you, right? And honestly, I don't want to. But there's something I really believe in that I think could help you, and that's why I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
So if you want to give me 5 minutes to listen, that's great. If not, see you later, right?
I would talk to them about like whatever else beside the gospel at first. Do you know what I mean?
A little bait
like
and switch.
we were, yeah. Well, like we were. Just
It was called building relationships of trust.
Because I would just try to sift people real quick, like right away. Just be like, you ever wonder why there's more than one church on the earth? And be like, I just want to get some groceries, bro. We're in Walmart right now, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you're not gonna be saved by, and then we got kicked out of Walmart. But
you were proselyting in Walmart?
Yeah, we would proselyte in Walmart.
You guys are hardcore.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
We proselyted on buses. Like, lots of our areas were.
That's hardcore.
And transit's a lot more efficient there than it is here. And so lots of areas were no car, no bikes, because bikes always got stolen. So you're on transit. And that was like, now it's like, not only do I stick out like a sore thumb in this crowd of people, I stick out like a sore thumb in this can of sardines of people.
But they can't get away from you.
Which is like, if you are, you know, the same kind of person who likes to do MLM type sales, and you just look at people as like a target, then that's great for you. But if you're less sociopathic and you have empathy, I believe
the professional term is marks.
Right. Then it's like, this is very uncomfortable. But the one great day I had bus contacting was when I did exactly what I was talking about before, is I sat down next to somebody and they looked so uncomfortable, and I'm like, you know, I'm going to talk to you, right? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, guess what? It's awesome. Like I don't know, something followed up with something cheesy and missionary, but I'm like, look, just, can you hear me out on this leaflet about Joseph Smith? And I pull out the Joseph Smith leaflet and tell them about the first vision. And they're like, so you want to learn any more? They're like, no. I'm like, yeah, I didn't think so, but
I had to try.
You want to see a picture of my family?
I really miss them.
Yeah.
There's this girl that's been writing me. Her name's Amy.
But she stopped writing me for a long time, which...
Well, I'm sure postage
to
England.
Stopped writing her, dude. I think you stopped writing her.
She stopped writing me because then she wrote me another letter saying sorry for not writing me.
Oh.
Which I was kind of like, Amy,
we got to see the proof.
You write to me about going to Hawaii and getting a job working downtown. And it's just like, whatever. Like, cool. And if you don't send that, I'm bummed because my companion's getting mail and I'm not. But, okay, like, whatever.
You just didn't care at all, did you?
I was, whatever.
Yeah, no.
Whatever.
Hey, it's cool, man. It's cool. I get it.
Are you like an overprotective brother?
No.
Oh, good. Good. This will be
not really.
This is gonna go better than I thought.
No, I'm not. Screw her. I don't care. To heck with her.
Oh.
That came out kind of weird at first.
Very weird. Do we need to redo this?
Had to make it. Yeah, start again.
Delete the whole thing.
And
is it Siri?
What
is
if
Siri on that thing?
So we were just about to make a joke that like turning off the. I wonder if there's like a voice command, like stop recording. No, okay, because we were just like talking about that, and then like the recording stopped anyway, so that's why it's gonna sound weird. But anyway,
pretty sure Troy's apartment is haunted.
There's a ghost in my computer, a ghost in the shell.
Dear ghost,
ghost,
please do not tamper with our podcasting equipment anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Amen.
So Andrew's on a mission in Manchester.
So I guess like we're talking about highs and lows. That was my first low, was street contacting.
Okay.
And what was the first high? I think it was probably about a year out, and I had this companion, Elder Call. He's from Orem, and we were like a real we were just like best friends, but like the weirdest kind of best friends. Like he was really into sports. I was really into this terrible band that I was in when I was in high school. And we were just like the jock and the rocker kind of thing.
Yeah.
And had nothing in common, but got along really, really well.
Yeah.
And we actually we committed somebody to baptism. He got baptized the weekend after I got transferred out. But that guy, that was actually like a real high, probably the highest high of my mission. He was Portuguese. He didn't speak any English. His wife was a member. She's also Portuguese, spoke English and Portuguese. He would come to church with her. He didn't understand anything. And he'd go to gospel principles and priesthood and the whole deal. And we were assigned as their home teachers. And we're home teaching them, and I get this overwhelming feeling, invite him to be baptized. And everybody's talked about how we need to wait for this guy to learn English before he gets baptized. Otherwise, he's just going to lose interest and drift away. And that's like what the bishop had said, the ward council had said. Everybody had been saying this. So I doubted that inspiration. And then we go back again, and I get that feeling overwhelming again. And I doubt it again, and I don't say anything. And then we go back again, and I don't get any feeling. And I'm like, oh, I guess I missed the boat. Oh. I guess the Lord is cursing me now for my disobedience or something. I don't know. But I just was like,
yeah,
going to do it anyway. And I'm like, Jose, do you want to get baptized? And he starts talking to his wife in Portuguese, and she starts laughing. And me and my companion are like, what's so funny? And she says, oh, he said he's been wanting to get baptized for a long time, but nobody's asked him. I'm like, am I living in the ensign now? Like,
you turn to the camera, you're just like, and that's all, folks. Thanks.
And and so that was really, like, Elder Call and I, we worked really, really hard. We taught him, and that was pretty much it. And teaching him was like, we'd bring one of the lesson pamphlets in English, we'd bring one in Portuguese, and we just kind of like, be like, can you guys read through that paragraph together? Okay, like, you got it? Any questions? No? Okay, here's the commitments. And we'd ask his wife, can you tell him what the commitments are? And then we'd follow up and be like, so can you ask him if he kept the commitments? She'd be like, yeah, I kept the commitments, and he still wants to get baptized. Okay, great.
Sweet, okay.
Read this other leaflet, and
we'll come back in a week.
And I think, like, the amazing thing about it was that I was not part of it at all. Yeah. I was literally just the guy who asked the one question that needed to be asked and gave the pamphlet so we could check the box.
Yeah.
And then I ended up going to the baptism, and the wife's family, who were living in London, they came up for the baptism, and they were the speakers at the baptism. And I think it was her aunt, she said, you know what? Carla got her patriarchal blessing, and it talked about how she would marry somebody in the temple or something like that and have an eternal family. But they lived in this small village in Portugal where the branch was like her family and maybe another family and like no one else. And the bishop just said, like, try and marry a decent guy. Like, just try and marry a good person because so she married this guy and he was great. But they said, we still believe because of her patriarchal blessing that someday her husband would join the church, and you're just hearing all these people talk about, how you're fulfilling these blessings and stuff like that. And it's like, wow, I literally had nothing to do with this. I just asked the one question that nobody else asked.
Yeah.
And gave him a leaflet, and it was all in the Lord's hands kind of thing. So that was the humbling part about it. And out of all the people that I taught and baptized, he's really the one who's still active.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah. And so that was probably one of the first highs. And the companion that I served with after that was one of the lowest lows, which translated into a high. And it was like a Garden of Gethsemane transfer, where I'm assigned with this elder, and I'd been serving around elders who had served with him, and they're like, man, he's tough. He's tough to get along with. And I'm like, why? And they're like, you have to meet him kind of thing. And I meet him, and we'd do our transfer day at Manchester Chapel, and we'd all meet up, and then we'd all take charter buses out to our areas or whatever. And I meet him, and they'd have like a testimony meeting while you're waiting for the charter buses and everybody to get there. And I meet him at this testimony meeting. I'm like, hi, I'm Elder Cuckow. And he just he's reading his scriptures, and he looks up at me and then goes back to his scriptures. And I'm like, how's it going? He's like, not looking up from his scriptures. He's like, good. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And the scripture pops in my head, men are that they might have joy. And I'm like, screw this guy, screw this area. I'm having a good time. Come hell or high water, I'm having fun. That is the number one name of the game. So I'm going to have a good time. And so
that's awesome.
We, he was really different. And he was in some kind of depression. And of course, and it's not just about being on a mission. Like depression, anxiety go undiagnosed for like everybody. But he was in some kind of depression. And it would really come out when we'd be planning, and we didn't have any investigators. And so it's like, do you want to go street contact in the town center, or do you want to knock on doors kind of thing? You're like, do you want to die of cancer, or do you want to get AIDS? Kind of pick your poison, right? And
I want to die in my sleep surrounded by my loved ones.
That's not a choice. And so he'd be like, what's the point of tracting? Nobody's home. I'm like, fine, let's go street contacting. He'd be like, why? People just give out fake numbers. We're like, well, we have to do something because we came on a mission to work, and sitting in the apartment is not working. So I drag him out, and he'd have this kind of rain cloud over his head the whole time. And I remember there was one P day we had, and I was pretty diligent at cleaning the apartment on P day. And I'm like, Elder, I don't ask a lot of you, but can you just vacuum this one room? And he's like, sure, yeah, no problem. And so I clean like the rest of the apartment, and I hear the vacuum going the whole time. And I'm like, this room should take 15 minutes, like tops. And it's been going for like an hour. And I walk into the room, and he's sitting on an armchair reading a book, which like mission library book, which is like not interesting, pushing the vacuum with one hand. And I'm like, I'm about ready to kill him. And I just smile and I say, Elder, I love it when you do that. And he gets up and he's like, why don't you hate me? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Why would I hate you, Elder? The Lord commanded me to love you. So even if I want to kill you, I'm going to love you.
While I kill you.
He's like,
I would do it out of love.
Why don't you hate me like every other companion I've ever had? And I'm like, look, like God said, love everyone, even you. And
that's the scripture.
Like there we go, buddy. Like I'm not giving. And then he gets onto some other tangent. And he's getting really dark and depressed. And I'm just like, fine, go home. And he's like, well, what? Like missionaries don't say that to other missionaries. I'm like, no, you should probably go home because you don't want to be here and you're just dragging me and the work down and you have a bad attitude. So just call the mission president. Here's the phone. Call him and go home because I'm getting tired of this. And he's like, okay, fine. And then I think probably our last week together was really, really good. And he just kind of like, he started to snap out of it.
So he didn't go home.
No, he didn't go home. He just kind of was like, okay, you called me on my bluff. Obviously I have a bad attitude. I'm going to start doing something about it. And it was just like, there was a lot of I made him breakfast every morning. I would always clean the apartment by myself. I just did everything I could to, one, be happy and have joy, and two, just make him feel loved. And it was almost like you guys get by my hate mail that I just love to tease people. So it was almost like me showing love for him, knowing that it made him mad, was like, it was still giving me that, I was scratching that itch to just like get on people's nerves. So yeah, so that ended up just humbling me, and it taught me, and this is something that I've carried out throughout my life, is to put something ahead of yourself. And that comes into your career, that comes into your family. And you know, when I've had tough times with my wife, I think back to that and how hard that was. And I'm like, you know what? Like, you've given a lot to your family, but you haven't had to give like you did there. So it's not that bad. Like marriage has got a lot of upsides.
You've never found your wife just sitting in a chair?
No, absolutely not. Like, nothing. See, my wife is, and I guess you guys could tell by that story I told, that she's not passive aggressive. Like, she is in your face aggressive. And that was what I loved about her. And that was what I found what I was missing. And not everybody's like this. Not everybody cares about this. But what I found missing was, you go on a date and it's a lot of like, okay, it's just, and what are you doing, and who are you, and what are you doing with your life, and what's your 5-year plan, and blah blah blah, and this is what I do, and she was just like, if she didn't like you, you knew, and if she liked you, you knew, and if you did something that bugged her, I knew.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'm like, what? Like, the honesty was refreshing, and not everybody's like that, and I think that's one reason why it was easier for me to marry her as quick as what I did. Like, we met in November. We started going out in December. We were official in January. We got engaged in May. So relatively quick, but maybe not as quick as other Mormon engagements, but
not by a long shot.
Latter-day Saint engagements.
Whatever.
Is what it's called, Andrew.
I will kick against the pricks on that one, probably till the day I die. But
pull your last words. It's Mormons.
But, you know, on that line, the thing that my patriarchal blessing, it told me that I'd be able to make the gospel understandable to those that I taught. And if people understand the term Mormon, then they understand the term Mormon. And I was blessed to make it understandable, so I will use the understandable word.
Yeah.
And unless President Nelson wants to talk to my spirit patriarch, who's dead, I think. Or maybe not.
And he can do that. He can do that.
If he wants to have a chat with him,
he can
by
talk
all
with
means.
Force Jedi. You know.
Force.
Every patriarch
ghosts,
becomes a force
and
ghost.
then get him to force ghost me the message. But like until then, I've been told to make it understandable. That's understandable. But that's an aside. So what were we talking about? My beautiful wife? I don't know.
Your beautiful wife, just kind of you're kind of like the first person. You're like a really interesting guest because you you've been overwhelmingly like positive. Like, I love your story about like, I thought maybe you would sort of like be negative. I wasn't sure. Well,
truth be told, I'm kind of like, I was really thinking about this because you know how Theo talked about you go through that faith crisis.
Sure, yeah.
And you go through that smug and difficult phase.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, I'm in a smug and difficult phase. Like, there's things I'm struggling with, and I really didn't want to come on this podcast and vent because you guys don't do that. Like, you guys, I know sometimes it seems like you guys are worried about becoming John DeLynn, but I think you guys are so far from that. You know, it's like when two YSA like make out for the first time and they're like, oh my gosh, we almost crossed the line. And, you know, from a guy who
passionate kissing is a sin, Andrew,
is now, you know, married and knows how much effort it takes to get across the line. Like, you're really, really far from it when you're just passionately kissing. Like, there's You really have to be committed to the act.
These young kids, though,
their activation energy is
it's not low.
No, like, because I remember being when I look back on it now, like you're talking about reflecting, it's like, yeah, I thought I was close, but now having been there, like, no, like that's wiffle ball, like, like that's
you're
like,
in the little leagues, pal.
It's like the 8-year-old who does a fadeaway shot in Pee-wee basketball, and he's like, I'm LeBron James. Like, that's the same.
Okay, what exactly is this analogy?
It's just like it's just
it's
Who's
like the 8-year-old.
It's just a kid. He's like, oh yeah, I'm the real stuff now, and it's like, Mormons making out. They're like, oh my gosh, we're the real stuff now. We've really done. It's like, no, you haven't.
It's a good analogy. I like.
Like, you're so far away from it. That 8-year-old's so far away from being a pro basketball player.
What do you I don't know how much you want to get into this, but like how maybe not like what are you struggling with, or like when did that happen?
When do you want me to talk about it off mic first? Like, I don't know. What
I mean, your brother might have been like, you're having Andrew on the podcast.
Did he say that?
He's like,
well, because he came out and visited me.
Let's get him on the horn right now.
And when it comes to the church, and I love my brother for this because he's a real kind of non-judgmental person you can talk to. He's heard a lot of my venting, and I've come a long way probably in the last couple months. And
is it months old?
Years? Probably 2 years. So what happened was, I talked to Lyndon about this previously, but our bishop gave us a challenge to read the Book of Mormon. And I was getting into cycling, so I'd listen to the Book of Mormon while I go on these 4-hour cycling rides. And I was listening to it one day, and there was something, it was the way the phrases were structured, where I was like, the thought came into my mind that maybe Oliver Cowdery and Joseph Smith wrote this. And it was kind of, and it just seemed, that idea really seemed to make sense.
Yeah.
And I had like a feeling that I would say was like how I'd felt the Spirit. And it was so disturbing, especially because all I was trying to do was do a bishop's challenge. And I'm like, why am I getting this feeling when I'm like I wasn't out reading the Book of Mormon looking for flaws.
No,
I was trying to do a bishop's challenge. And it was just, I don't know if you guys want me to
do
get
a bishop's challenge
into the specifics of what it was. About the Book of Mormon.
I'm always like hesitant to actually get into those specifics.
I don't have to get into it. Like, it doesn't. All that happened was I'm reading the Book of Mormon, and based on the kind of sentence structure and flow, it was the first time the thought made sense to me that maybe this isn't a divinely inspired document.
Yeah,
and that was crushing, and I didn't know what to do with this feeling and this thought, especially because the most stressful thing is that it wasn't something I was looking for.
Yeah.
And
it's like, were you ready for it?
No. And the thing that became more distressing was, like, the next year we're given a challenge to read the Gospels in 3rd Nephi before Christmas, like in November and December. So I did that challenge too. And I'm reading it was especially Matthew, and we'd read and discuss it in priesthood. And I'm just like, this is really structured in a way to convince Jews that Jesus is the Messiah.
Right.
And I'd always taken the Bible, and I think the way it was presented to me and everybody else is that this is kind of firsthand accounts. I think it might be Book of Mormon spillover, because the Book of Mormon is written as a firsthand account, right?
Yeah.
And so you just kind of associate all scripture with firsthand accounts, and that the people who are writing the scriptures are the people who actually wrote it. But now I'm reading the New Testament, I'm like, no, that's not the case here. Like, somebody purposefully wrote this. And the things that stood out were the amount of, first off, the first chapter of Matthew, where they go through the genealogy to kind of prove that Jesus was from a divine lineage.
Yeah.
And then, or not a divine lineage, but a kingly lineage, and that every time they go out of their way to show how he did something to fulfill a prophecy in the Old Testament.
Right.
And then I just read the wiki page on the Gospels, and they were written, in 60, 70, 80, 90 AD, and they were based on oral traditions. So now I'm like, well, for all I know, the New Testament is based on a game of telephone. And again, I'm disturbed because I'm like, I'm trying to do a bishop's challenge.
I'm just trying to do the challenge.
Why am I thinking like this? Like, I'm not I didn't go out to try and...
the term bishop's challenge. I don't know why. I just love that. I'm just trying to do a bishop's challenge.
And so now, once that... And the scriptures were kind of the anchor of my faith.
Yeah.
And so there's my first struggle. And then...
Well, it's interesting to me is surely you've like heard all these things. Like when people are like, what's it? The Spalding theory.
Solomon Spalding. Yeah.
Like I'd heard it, so but I'd also...
So you'd had these thoughts before. And like anyone who's like people who are like, the book of Revelation says, do not add to this book.
Right.
But that one...
And I was like, you know, the Bible was like put together in like
exactly,
300
right?
AD
like,
by a bunch of Romans.
That one's like, it's like...
They put that at the end out of coincidence.
Yeah. Like,
and then people are like, what?
And I think, because I've been through the CES letter. Am I allowed to say that on the podcast?
You know,
that's mighty John Delaney.
I've been through it, and honestly, like, I think that there's a decent enough refutation from Fair. A decent enough challenge to his document, I think. And I haven't been through all of like Fair's debunking and then his debunking of Fair's debunking, because when I think about it, I'm like, I've got a life and I do not want it to be this. Like going back and forth between like disaffected Mormons and Mormon apologists. I'm just like, you know, so I think.
But the point is you had heard these things. You had thought about them before. But now you had like had a feeling about them.
It wasn't like that was never the thought or intention that I went into reading the Book of Mormon with. I want to tell you guys something about like a scripture I read at the end of my mission in the Book of Mormon. And this is part of the reason why it means so much to me. Was I'm coming to the end of my mission. I'm in my last week, I think. And I'm feeling concerned over, did I give it everything? And I think every missionary feels this way. And I'm just reading through the Book of Mormon. Part of what I do for my personal study is I spend 15 minutes just reading the book. And I try and get through it every few months. And I'm just reading through it in my own casual way. And it's when Nephi's quoting Isaiah. And I'm paraphrasing here, but the scripture I came across that day when I'm having this feeling and insecurity over giving it my all is it says, I have put my words in your mouth and made you mighty to establish my kingdom, or like something to that effect. And that spoke peace to my heart in such a unique way. And that's why kind of like the Book of Mormon in a lot of ways means everything to me. It has answered the questions and my personal doubts and insecurities. So it wasn't just like a kind of like, oh, this is shocking. It was like, this is like destroying something that means everything to me. You know, it was. And so anyway, so once I get into that kind of space where I'm like, I don't know if any of this is true or legit, or if I can rely on my feelings, because I get that spiritual feeling when I have a moment of clarity that maybe the book was a sham. And so then kind of everything that the church does that I would do differently stands out more. And I was serving in an elders quorum presidency, and I'm going to these ward council meetings, and I'm just thinking, here's your ward council meeting. They stress focusing on individuals, and I start thinking about that and backtracking. I think about the work meetings I go to. And so I even though I'm an accountant, I participate in a lot of sales meetings or operations meetings or whatever. And I think, okay, let's say I'm sitting in a room with 12 senior managers of a business, and I have a very specific technical accounting issue that I don't know how to work through. And let's say the CFO or the VP of finance is sitting in that meeting, and it comes to be my turn to talk, and I disrupt this big meeting to talk about a very specific accounting problem with the only person in this room who can deal with it. And it's like, it would just be like, why don't you have a separate meeting? So I'm sitting in these work councils, and they're trying to focus on individuals. I'm like, no one here knows these people. You're trying to focus on this. You're taking your macro managers to focus on a micro issue. And that doesn't make sense to me. And I don't know why anybody's not questioning the effectiveness of this. That was one thing that stood out to me. And I got really angry about that. And then ministering, where I'm just like, guys, they're just asking us to be disciples. And have any of you read the New Testament or the Beatitudes or anything where like Jesus tells you to love people more than they deserve to be loved? And that being a disciple means picking people up and taking care of them, and it does not mean doing a monthly visit. And everybody's talking about it like it's this groundbreaking thing, but really, like, that's how I always approached home teaching, because I believe that my calling as a disciple is to love people and serve them and commit myself and sacrifice for their benefit. And you guys are like, this is just life-changing. Did you know you can just phone these people now to see how they're doing? And I'm like, what is wrong with you people? And then we're doing these, we talk about it every fourth Sunday, and I'm like, I feel like I'm in a gulag and I'm getting re-educated. Because we're not really talking about anything new. We're just talking about a new name for the same thing in a different way. And it's like, you know, it's kind of like under Lenin, you would call potato potishkika, but now we call it rotishkika. You know? And it's like, this is the same potato. No, more hard labor in gulag till you understand rotushkika.
How do you feel? So this is a couple of years in. I think there is sort of I think we may have talked about sort of a mourning process, or like the stages of grief or whatever that sort of occur when, because I was kind of like, for me, when that happened, when I sort of had a faith crisis, it was the mourning of my old faith and what I thought that it was and everything. And then sort of I had to kind of rebuild what it was from there into what it is now, which is still, I'm still figuring it out. Where are you at right now with that?
Rebuilding it.
Yeah.
One thing I thought about was the story of the Garden of Eden. And you're in this spiritual bubble. You're in this spiritual Garden of Eden. Mm-hmm. And then you're given some kind of knowledge that shatters. It kind of casts you out of that garden. Yeah. And right now I feel I'm in a lone and dreary world kind of thing. I'm just kind of, and I think maybe that's the reason why that story's powerful and persisted and was written into the Old Testament, is that we grow in our knowledge from, we enter some kind of paradigm or bubble, and it's not just with spiritual knowledge, but any kind of knowledge, and then you're kind of given a new piece of information that just shatters everything. So and
So what you're saying is the Calgary West Stake was your Garden of Eden, and now you've moved out to the godless West Coast.
I don't think it has anything to do with geography.
Lone and dreary world.
You're like, Lynn, I think you're missing the point here.
Like, I know.
Like neck deep in this.
I'm putting your metaphor together.
Well, I know, like, there's access to grind sometimes. I know the West Stake carries a level of intensity with the gospel that, because we got married. Stake? We lived. Is
that my stake?
No. Your Calgary stake. We lived just down McLeod Trail when we first got married. We were in the Calgary stake, this one.
Okay.
And it was so weird because I go to stake conference, and President, now Elder Spackman, is like, his big challenge of stake conference was to read a little bit from the Book of Mormon every day. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's it? They call this guy a stake president?
Have you seen the 7, now 8 points of discipleship?
Plus the never-ending lectures on attending the temple, and and I'm like, this is nothing. Like,
I got Richard Cuckow breathing down my neck about family history. Come to the West Stake.
Yeah, well, he's a funny story about my dad and family history. He's kind of made his own family history story about himself now, but when I was in high school, I'd bring friends over or my girlfriend or whatever, and my dad would be like, "What's your last name?" And they'd be like, whatever. They'd say a name and it's like English sounding. He's like, "Your parents, you got grandparents from England?" I'd be like, "Yes, the Johnsons are English." Like, "Oh, Johnson, hey, what's your dad's name?" "Ed." Ed Johnson. And then all of a sudden he's like, "And is your grandpa Norm? And is your great grandpa?" And they're like, "Yeah." It's like, "Oh, well, look at what I just found on familyhistory.org or something like that. And he starts showing them their whole family tree, and they're actually getting interested in it, I think, right? At least they never like complained about it and said, your dad's so weird. But my youngest brother, Ethan, who's 17, he came out to visit us in May, and he's like, I brought my girlfriend over. And the first thing Dad does is he's like, what's your parents' name? And he starts entering it into Family Search. So now that's our like family history. Is Dad is insane about family history and asks all our friends and girlfriends about their family history.
He's just doing he's doing a little genetic test.
Your great grandpa was the England Strangler, turns out.
Pretty much. But my dad has a passion for family history, and like my job involves detailed record keeping and maintaining records, and that is the part of my job that I hate the most. And so coming home to search through records is like, can I delegate this to like a branch admin? Don't we have like an admin assistant who does this kind of stuff? Usually I'm on the higher level kind of big picture stuff.
So I had a one of our listeners and a friend of mine reached out to me after Theo's episode, and he same thing, right? Like he sort of read the things that we're not supposed to read, and then had that experience where he like had this like, oh my goodness, sort of paradigm shift moment where it's like, okay, now I don't know what to think of anything. So we were just like talking about that, and also like the importance of, because the thing that the point that we kind of arrived at was like, it seems like people either in the church either don't know about this stuff, or if they do, they find out and they can't deal with it, and then they leave. And so what's left is that everyone in the church is just like either has their head in the sand, or they just don't know about it, or they refuse to look at it even. Or if they have looked at it, they have like a great answer for everything, you know, even though there's not a lot of great answers. And so the point that we came to is like, it's important to like have a base of people who know all the things that we know and decide to stay anyway, and to keep what's good about the church and about the gospel, and to pass on those values and those lessons and everything. How do you feel, or like, what would you say to someone who is in that situation? Because I think there's a lot of people like us and who feel this way. And this is where like I'm afraid of getting to like John Dehlin and because
like with John Dehlin, I've listened to a few of his podcasts lately, and the thing that I don't like about him, and I think even like ex-Mormons don't like this about him, is he's always looking for a scandal.
Yeah.
You guys aren't looking for a scandal. Like, you're talking about your life.
Yeah.
And he's always looking for like he had these girls talking about being sexually assaulted as missionaries, and he's like, so would you sue the church? And they're like, that's not what we're about. We want the church to just be better at handling these things when they happen.
Yeah.
We're not out to get the church. And he's like, what would it take you to sue? I'm like, why are you digging this up? And
I have
like,
a lawyer right here.
He had a guy who worked for Deseret Trust Company, and he's like, so what about these $1 million loans they give the general authorities? And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, do you think there's any kind of financial improprieties? And he's like, I've worked in the banking sector, I worked in the corporate sector, and nobody scrutinizes individual transactions like how the church does.
Yeah.
Like the amount of control, internal control that they have is like second to none.
Yeah.
Like there is the chance of misappropriation of funds is very, very low. But it's just that John Dehlin's like bringing this up and trying to get a scandal.
Yeah. No, and I don't want a scandal, and I don't.
You guys don't get into that though, so I don't know why you worry about even getting there, right?
I don't know, man. I'm just getting nervous. You know, I don't want to get that letter. It's like, we're holding a council. You don't even have to be there, but we're having it.
This is just to let you know.
Yeah. But I think it is so. I feel very strongly about it. I think it's so important that like, because you find out these things, and the first thing you realize is that you kind of like, it's hard to talk to people about it, and you kind of have to be careful because you don't want to like, you kind of don't want to lead anyone else down where you've been, because you kind of don't want them to experience the difficulty that you're experiencing. But once you're there, it is like a lonely. Your description is apt. That description of a lone and dreary wilderness, of like, who do I talk to about this? But
I think you kind of like, I had a ministering interview with a member of our elders quorum, and he's like, yeah, I just really informal. How's everything going with you? And I'm like, do you want the short answer or the long answer? Like, how much time do you have? He's like, let's hear the long one. And I just kind of pretty much emptied what I told you guys on him. And I'm like, and I don't know what to do with this. And I dumped some other things on him. Right. But he was just like, you know what? You got to speak up about this. And I'm like, what? And he's like, well, you're not the only guy who's struggling with these things. And I'm like, well, sometimes I just come out as very, very negative, and I don't want to like bring the quorum down. So I've been finding out how to do it more positive ways. Like, we had to read this talk by Elder Oaks, or President Oaks, and it was his one on small and simple things. And as a talk, or as a piece of written literature, I think it's structured very poorly. Mm-hmm. And I think it's poorly referenced, and I think it kind of rambles and meanders.
Yeah.
And it's very, very uncharacteristic of Dallin H. Oaks to give a talk like that, because he gave 2 talks at last conference. And the first one he gave is the kind of talks that I love, where like he truly expounds. He lays out an idea in a systematic, logical order, and citations and cross references to scriptures, every sentence kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then he gives this kind of rambling, meandering talk on small and simple things, and it doesn't really go anywhere. And I'm just kind of like, they made us read it, and everybody's talking about. The thing that struck out to me is people are like, I just realized I don't do a lot of small and simple things. And I'm like, that's a crappy thing to walk away with, because I know you do, because you're a member of the church, and I don't know people on this earth who do any more small and simple things than members of this church. So I know you are. But they asked me, like, Andrew, what do you think about this? I'm like, I don't think it could pass grade 10 English. I don't know. Like, and I was worried about that one. Shane was visiting. He can fill you guys in on that one a little bit more. I definitely wasn't that composed when I said it. But I was just like, I'm frustrated, right?
Yeah.
But I said, like, I brought that up to the member of the Elders Quorum presidency, and I was just like, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
I don't want to just ruin people's Sunday. And he's like, well, find somebody you trust that you can talk to about these kinds of things, because you're not the only person who's struggling. And so now I still kind of like, maybe now my comments are passive aggressive. So when they talk about ministering, I'm like, you know what? I just think about all the great people who ministered to me when I was lonely or friendless, and they all did it before they called it ministering. They're just people trying to be disciples.
You know what? That's a great point, though.
So it's kind of like it's just trying to figure out a way to express these things in a way that's still kind of positive and edifying.
Yeah.
I think.
And just making the decision, because like what I get from you is that you're staying in. You're staying in.
And this is why I do. And this is I had, like, I kind of went to a dark place, but I thought, okay, you leave the church. What do you do now?
Right.
Do you watch porn? Do you drink alcohol? Do you smoke pot? Because if there is no God, there's nothing wrong with any of these things. And you can do any of them. Are you going to start doing these things? Are you going to be that kind of guy? Is that the kind of guy you want to be? And what I realized was I don't. And I guess I believed in the standards of the church so much that they really just have become my standards.
Yeah.
And maybe that happens to a lot of people, and it can be hard for when you see people struggling with their testimony, it's like, oh, they just want to sin. Well, in my case, I don't. And if I struggle with the church, it's not because I just want to sin. I don't want to do anything against the standards of the church, because they've actually, I think they're foundations for a good kind of life.
They are.
Right? Like,
for sure, yeah.
And so I want them to be part of my life. I want them to be part of my kids' life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I stay, is because the church overall, the things I'm taught are good. The things, like, I teach a youth Sunday school class, and the thing I'm trying to build in them, which I think the rhetoric of the church is getting away from, is just kind of like critically thinking about the scriptures and kind of trying to evaluate them. because lots of the lesson ideas I get are just kind of like wishy-washy stuff, and maybe 1 out of every 4 lesson ideas will be based on scriptures. The rest are just kind of like, read True to the Faith or watch this conference talk. And I'm like, these kids need to know the fundamentals, and they need to understand how to read this as a work of literature and understand it and have it be meaningful and think about it, so that when they're told something that's culturally, that's toxic, that comes from the culture of the church, they know the foundation, so they know, no, like, you're out of line. As a bishop, you can't talk to me like that. And as a bishop, you shouldn't talk to anybody like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not just going to let you bully me.
Yeah.
Because you're out of line and you're disrespecting me or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a bishop. It can be anybody. But they need to understand the core of where all of this came from, I think. And
you know what my favorite part about you teaching these 12-year-old kids
is that I showed them your video.
You're like, here's a detoxifying piece of church culture, the mission stories sketches.
Well, we were sharing experiences about something, and I kept sharing mission experiences, and I'm like, oh, guys, I sound like such an idiot. Let me show you guys a video about people who talk about mission experiences too much. And I showed them video 1, which I think, I just love it. And the thing about these kids is they're like 12, so they don't always get all the dry humor.
Yeah.
So they're listening to Theo talk about the Predator, and they're like, why would he say that? Why would he? And I'm like, he's like, guys, it's like tongue in cheek. Like, it's a play on.
You're trying to explain it to them.
You're like, and you give them the little spiel. We're like, don't you get it? These guys are like creating things outside of the Mormon box. Treasure this.
Treasure it.
Exactly.
Andrew, you're a treat. You're a treasure.
Are you cutting me off? Like, if we gone over time?
I mean,
I could literally be here all night. Like,
he's just like, I still have more to say about YSA and dating.
I could talk about, like, let's cut this up to what's our time?
We're at 1:20 right now.
Let's go do this part 1, part 2.
What do you want to talk about?
Anything. You guys want to keep talking about dating? Like, the stories I could tell about the stupid things I did. Well, you were asking about regrets earlier. I don't know. I've got a bucket load. Literally everything I said to everyone. From the age of 21 to 24.
Give us your top 5 foot and mouths, and then we're going to cut it off.
Oh,
because I got
top 5.
I gotta go to bed, bro.
Bro, you work for the government.
I work for the government.
Who shows up before 11? Top 5 foot and mouths. I don't know.
Or just one.
Just one. I'm trying to think.
I know your worst dating idea was that double date we went on.
That wasn't a bad thing I did. It was like an idea I had and you followed me.
An idea. You and Ashley, 2 aggressive people, cornered me in my basement, forced me to go on a double date with Ashley's horrible roommate.
I think she's probably a nice person. It was a terrible date. Like, she was a bad date for sure.
She could be a good person. I would never know.
Yeah.
Because my only experience was the one terrible date.
Why was it so terrible?
She didn't try at all.
No.
Like, she did not.
She just hated
She
Lyndon.
agreed to come on this date, but then, and Lyndon's doing your fundamentals, I think, of trying to talk, and we went bowling.
Yeah.
And she's just not even entertaining anything, which, do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, that's rude, but at the same time, in her brain, she's probably just like, I'm not giving this guy any false impressions.
Yeah, good for her.
Which is like, you know what? Fair point, because a lot of girls, I can't say a lot. I
guess I can't blame her, because you never go on like an almost blind double date with 2 people who are a week away from getting engaged. It's like you 2 were just like madly in love, and you're like, I think everyone. You were like missionaries. You're like, everyone should feel the way we feel. So it's like, we both have roommates. Let's force them into this situation that they don't want to be in.
Yeah.
And I was game.
You were game. You were down.
I was like, I can play the game. I'm a good sporting guy.
So how did it end? Did you kiss her?
It does go down.
No.
On the list of worst date I've ever been on.
But
and that was with Andrew.
Yeah.
And I blame you.
I blame you for making it the worst, for choosing to be offended.
All right, guys, I gotta go to bed. Let's cut this off.
Okay.
Sorry, bro.
All right, no
it was
problem.
Nice.
Guys.
It was nice to like finally, I've heard so much about you from my sister and from Lyndon.
Whatever.
I'm so glad you flew out here
Just for this.
Did you drive? Did you fly?
No, we flew.
I flew all the way out here just to be on the podcast.
I sat with the kids the whole time. My wife got to sit. Originally, like when she did the seating, she was like, "I'm sitting with the kids and you're sitting by yourself." I'm like, "Honey, you know what? I'll sit with the kids." And it was like, "Here's your iPod. Here's your coloring book. Dad's watching Deadpool 2. See you in an hour."
Don't look at the screen.
It was literally like the easiest flight I've ever been on. That's awesome. Because I wasn't sitting next to two fat people. I was sitting next to two tiny children. So.
Oh, so good.
Shoulder room for days.
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Come back anytime. Lyndon, what do you have to say to us? What do you think?
I think Andrew gave us a real fleshed out story.
He did.
And the real moral of it, as always, is to stay true and faithful.
You guys.
Bye-bye.